We are now going to see how to use SetToProperty to solve dynamic object. First, to understand what is SetTO means. TO means test object property. There are two types. One is TO, another is RO. You might have noticed at the time of get TO properties method were there, get RO properties method were there. We have used during get, we mostly use get RO. RO means runtime object. TO means test object. RO means runtime object. It is not to. You should not pronounce it at to test to or set to property. Runtime object is RO. So what is TO? What is RO? TO test object represents the objects in the identification or repository and description properties or properties. RO, it is a represents the objects in the repository, and RO property is the property of the object from the application under test. AUT, application under test. So RO property is not the description properties, whereas TO property means it is a description properties. So this is the concept between TO and RO. Now I'll come back. First I need to arrive at the logic. So the logic says this dialog, right click, this dialog object properties. Dialog is the object which I need to manage, and property, the text property is dynamically changing. My system, what I know is from this property value, the value fax order number is a static portion. This portion is static. 144 is the value that is changing. I like to replace 144 to 145. Question asks, from where this 144 comes? I know this 144 comes from the order number object. If it comes from the order number object, how I retrieve the order number I have already seen. I know how to retrieve it. Now I want that to be replaced to this position. Instead of 144, I like to replace. Available QTP methods are, he allows me to change the entire text property, not the portion of the value property. He doesn't allow me to change portion of the value property, but QTP allows me to change the entire text property. So if I have, since he allows me to change, I know I can retrieve the order number. I know this portion of the text is static. I can frame this text in the form of script and pass that value to the text property. This is what SetToProperty means. I am setting for this fax order number 141 object text property with the new value. The new value should be in the syntax static portion fax order number dot, NO is the number, dot space, then actual order number. I need to frame this text in my script and pass that framed text inside the text property dynamically is what SetToProperty is all about. Let us see now how to do this. I understood now what is the logic I need to apply. First is I need to retrieve the order number. After the insert order, I get the order number. So I click on insert order. I put a wait statement because I need some time to retrieve the order number. So I have applied a wait statement. I need to retrieve the order number. There are several ways I can retrieve it. Available methods, step generator using get properties, output value, storing the value in data table, then insert output value method, the menu insert output value, active screen output value. These are all the available method to retrieve the object properties. I go to insert. Now I go to step generator. In this step generator, I choose the object from which I like to retrieve the property. So in our case, the object is not the default flight reservation. So the object is not recorded at the time of recording. So I need to retrieve using the hand symbol. So I go to step generator. Now I click on object. In this object, I now use hand symbol. I use hand symbol. Now you can see this is another problem you might face. As I click on hand symbol, I am into the notepad which is not allowing to select the flight reservation. If I choose the flight reservation with the hand symbol below, then that window, that shell script is identified, not the flight reservation. It is identified as a Win toolbar. Now I clicked on flight reservation. You can see now Win toolbar is what the recognized object. This is not the object that I like to handle it. To manage that, I select the hand symbol again. Keep pressing the control. Now I clicked on to the hand symbol. You can see the hand symbol. I press my control key. My key comes back to the original position. Minimize the so-called class nodes, and now you can see flight reservation visible. Once it is visible, I remove my hand from that control. Once I remove the hand, you can see now flight reservation object is visible. Now you can see that flight reservation object is visible. I press now the hand symbol onto the order number object. I am able to see object selection window, Win edit order number. Once I choose the order number, my aim is to retrieve the order number from the object Win edit order number. What is the operation I need to do? Last time we did get visible text. This time I'll try to use get RO property. I use get RO property. RO property is a runtime object property value, not description property value. Property, which property holds the order number? I know it is the text property. If I don't remember the property name, use spy and try to understand which property holding the order number. Return value, I make it as a variable O order number. V underscore O order number is my variable that is going to hold my property value. This time I am using get RO property. Any runtime object property of QTP can be recognized using this method, and the property that I want to retrieve is text, and the value I would like to store it into a variable, and that variable is V underscore O number. I say OK now. I retrieve now the order number. I cannot replace order number directly inside my object fax order number 141 as you see it now. The reason being, what I'm trying to say is I cannot replace it here 144. I just opened the object properties. In that object properties window, I am now replaced the value directly with 144. What I am trying to say is we cannot do this because text property cannot be like this. It has to be fax order number dot then space then order number. So I need to frame the text. I call it as vfax text. Vfax text is the variable. I am now framing the text fax order number F capital space between a fax and order, O capital space between a order and number, N capital, it is NO dot. Then there is a space, quote ends. This is the static portion we have framed. Framing with ampersand, which is my concatenation operator. Use variable VO number. Now VO number is now assigned to the fax order number. For our better understanding, I message box fax text. So we know how that message is framed. My next job is how to pass this value to this object. I am not yet done. I have framed the text, assigned the value to the text. I need to pass the value to the dialog object. To pass the value to the dialog object, we use the method called SetToProperty. Since I don't know the syntax, I go to insert, as usual, step generator. Which object now we like to work? I need to choose the object. I went to insert, step generator. From just step generator, I got the step generator window. I choose the object by selecting the object icon. I choose the object now from here. In this, the object is fax order number, not fax number. Fax number is not our candidate. We choose this fax order number because the property of fax order number is what we like to change. I select OK. I choose now operation because I need on this object I need to change description properties. That is why TO. TO is test object, that is nothing but object present in my repository. For that object I am changing the property, which is the property description property. Description property is nothing but the identification properties used by QTP for that object. In our case, the property that I want to change is the text property. With what value I like to change? In my case, it is variable fax text. It is a variable fax text is what I like to change. The content of this variable is to be passed under this value. I now finished my arguments. Now after this message box, I am now for this dialog object. In this object properties, I am choosing the right click after selecting the dialog. I get object properties. When I get object properties, dynamically I am trying to change text property, description properties. In this description properties, I like to change text property alone. And this value I now assign it with the new value, and that value is from the variable. In the script it is not as a variable, so I remove the quotes so that it treats it as a variable. So description property is changed now to the current order number. This is what we did it manually in our previous run. for understanding the property and the object that is dynamic. Now it is done by the script. I run the script. You see now the way the script works. So it has started its execution. It is typing the date. So it is inserting. Now you see that this is the framed text that you see it in the message box. This has to be identical to the dialog text property. In our case it is identical. Now it is setting the value to the using the 20. It is setting the value of the property. Now it goes to the fax order number and it types the fax number now without any problem. So I'm trying to understand more. Before setting the value, I like to now take out the property of the description properties before and after. How the value is. So message box, directly I am putting window flight reservation dot dialog. This also people call it as a scripting. I choose the object dot. Now get TO property. I am taking the value of text property before setting and I put it in the message box after setting as well. This will give clearly how the values are set using SetTO property. Here please note I am not using runtime object. Why I am not used get RO is the dynamic object dialog fax order number 141 at this stage, line number 20 stage, object is not identifiable. Now I am identifying the object only in the repository and using getTo property I am retrieving the description property. And after that line number 21 I am setting the property. Now I can use both TO property or RO property in line number 22 because object is now identifiable. At line number 22 object is identifiable. At line number 20 object is not identifiable. These are all some of the important points that you need to note. As you get into practice, you will understand much better. Now, you can see that it is selecting, it is all doing the job. Two message boxes, one is before setting the object property and after setting the object property. Wait statement, it retrieves the order number. You note the order number, that is 146. Yes. Now I am messaging the fax text. That's fine. 146. After this I am messaging get TO property. Please note it is 145. 4. This is the value that was present in the repository description properties before setting the value. Next I am setting the value. I am retrieving now. At this stage I can use both TO as well as RO. TO means retrieves from the repository. RO means retrieves from the application. Identify the object retrieves it from the application. So for get RO properties, identification of object is important. Here our problem is identification of object itself. So if you understand this, I think it is easy to proceed. Now fax order number he is going to type. Now the method that we have applied for this management, dynamic object management, and the method we learned now is SetToProperty. Very useful concept, very important concept.